Sounds good. What's going on, guys? Today in this video, I'm gonna be installing this beautiful instrument on my 240. So I picked this thing up not too long ago. It's a set of eBay headers along with a cat delete. So at this point, pretty much everything after the motor is gonna be modified. So this is going to be a full exhaust. I've already got a catback system installed on the car. So I should have the EGR, pretty easy to remove. I've got two O2 sensors that need to be removed in order to throw this thing on. I should get a check engine light because I don't have any cats. But at that point, who cares? I got a 240 and it's gonna be loud. So it's definitely gonna be worth it. This setup right here is called a 4-to-2-to-1 header as opposed to a 4-to-1 header. This setup is a lot better for high-end and mid-end torque and horsepower versus the 4-to-1 setup. I noticed a big difference when I replaced the catback exhaust, and I should notice a pretty big difference when I install this. The difference between this and the stock setup is that I have not only smaller runners going from the engine, but I also have smaller piping after that. I'm gonna slightly address the elephant in the room. I wanted to try something a little bit different. You guys will notice I have the wheels that were originally on the Accord on here. Now they're a little bit too big for my liking. These are 19s. I just wanted to get an idea as to, you know, if I like 19s on the car or not. I think they're a little bit too big, but that's just me. Yeah, I just wanted to let you guys know about that. They're coming off sometime soon because I have something else coming in, and these are going back on the Accord. Yada, yada, yada. Stay tuned for another video. I'll have that stuff coming. So yeah, let's get back to it. Exhaust. Let's see what this thing sounds like. I think it sounds pretty good. I want to make this a little bit louder because it is a little loud. It's got a decent note to it, but let's really piss off all my neighbors. Jumping into the engine bay, you can see that we've got our motor right here and the exhaust is found on the right side of the engine. So if we come down here and take a closer look at this, each one of these exhaust ports, they all lead into one pipe, but you can see that each one of these collect into the big part down here. So this is not exactly the most efficient kind of system because all of these gases are all going to try and cram each other down into one single pipe down there. We don't have nice, smooth transitions that lead from port to port. So our new setup is going to be leading two ports together, and then where both of those collect, it's going to collect again. That way, any of the exhaust gases that are coming through the exhaust system are going to be coming out at a very good velocity, and they're not going to be disturbed by any turbulent air caused by the other ports. So to get this out and take this out, we've got to remove each one of these little brackets or whatever that we have attached to the exhaust manifold. We've got the EGR port found right there. I don't know how well you guys can see that, but there's a port that's leading up to the exhaust system that we need to replace. We have a gasket that we're going to be installing where the original gasket for this exhaust is. We've got one O2 sensor right there, and we have another one found underneath the car. So I'm gonna get started and remove everything from the top of the car before we get started and go underneath. All the components that are in here that are attached to the exhaust manifold look like they're all held in by 10mm bolts. So using my air ratchet and an extension, I'm gonna be taking each one of these out. So the first one right here is for the oil dipstick. Take that out, you can take a look at it, but there's a bracket that's holding it up to the exhaust. There's another bracket down here that's holding the O2 sensor in place. Again, with a 10mm, I'm gonna be using my ratchet, my extension, and my 10mm socket to take it out. And be careful when you're doing all this stuff, especially if you just drove your car. This is the exhaust side of the car, so it's all going to be super hot. If you haven't driven this for a while, I'd say a good half hour, everything should be okay to touch. But if you just drove it, do not touch this stuff. Let it cool down so you can actually touch all these components without burning yourself. Next up comes removing the primary O2 sensor. So I've got an O2 sensor socket that I'm just gonna slide over top of the O2 sensor. And to loosen this up, you're gonna attach this to your ratchet and then make sure it's set to the loosening setting. Slide it over top and just break this loose. And as soon as you break it loose slightly by hand, you should be able to just twist this and remove it out of the way. So we pretty much have everything on top of the motor disconnected. We have all the wires removed from the exhaust manifold. Now, if we come to the back part of this right here, we can see that we have the EGR pipe that's connecting the exhaust gases from the exhaust side and recirculates it to the intake. Now, if you can tell in the middle of the screen, I actually had to cut this because the nut that was found on the end of the exhaust, the EGR pipe, the pipe that connects both sides, was extremely rusty. Now, it wasn't a huge deal. What I did notice is that that was an issue beforehand, and what I did now is I actually purchased another EGR pipe that I can connect the exhaust to the intake side. So the pipe connects from this end to the exhaust, wraps around the block, and connects up to the intake side right over there. So the nut right over there, this little part was completely rounded off, and taking it off is not going to happen. So it's very thin gauge steel, so all I did was I cut this with a little hacksaw. I cut it, and I'll be replacing that later. But as for the exhaust, this part needed to be removed in order to get the headers out. Last but not least, on top of the engine, we're going to be disconnecting each one of the studs and nuts that are securing the exhaust up to the head. I'm not sure if each one of the nuts are going to come out nice and easily, or the stud is going to come with it. Hopefully everything is nice and easy, but if it's not, we're going to have to get replacement stuff. Now you can see there is a little bit of surface rust on each one of the bolts. Not a huge deal, but it's something that hopefully isn't going to be an issue. Let's take a look at it. Let's give this a shot and see if each one of these will crack loose. Oh, that's actually not bad at all. If they're all like that, oh, I'm gonna be really happy. Wow, this is actually so nice. Thank you, Nissan. For a 20-year-old car that looks like it's got the stock manifold, it doesn't look like these bolts have ever been replaced or removed. These bolts are coming out really easily. And that's all of them pretty much cracked loose. So I'm gonna go in here with my air ratchet and loosen all of these up to the point that the nuts are almost off of each one of the studs. With everything on the top of the motor up in the engine bay all pretty much good, I'm gonna fast forward it a little bit, and I'm gonna go underneath the car, and I'm gonna disconnect the exhaust from the cat back part of it. I'm also going to be removing the secondary O2 sensor, which is found in line with the exhaust system. Once I have both of those out, I should be able to come back up top into the engine bay and fully remove each one of the studs and nuts that are holding the stock exhaust manifold onto the head. After fast forwarding about 15 minutes, this is where we are right now. So we've still got the car up in the air. We have this section over here removed from the car. So this section right over here is where the exhaust manifold would have been. We had to disconnect it because we couldn't get this little section over here with the catalytic converter past the steering shaft. So if we take a look at in this pipe, you can see that we have one catalytic converter in there, and you can see that the honeycomb is actually in still pretty good condition. So there's one. This, I'm not sure what this is. I think this was an old catalytic converter, but take note of what's inside the pipe. Nothing. You can see right through it, and it doesn't really look like it could be a resonator. What I think happened is that the catalytic converter, the secondary one right here, died. The honeycomb catalyst that was found inside of here deteriorated and went through the entire exhaust system. A mod that I know is kind of popular that people do is they will punch out their catalytic converter so they can have a cat delete, but it looks like it's stock. Now, I do not think that this is what the previous owner did, because the previous owner was, I'd say, a 65-year-old lady that had this car before me. So I really don't think that was the game plan in her mind. I think it broke and she just never really noticed. But this is all gone. This is not going back in the car. And in the car, we just have the exhaust manifold right here held in place with one nut. So once I take this off, we'll be able to remove the manifold and throw our headers in place. And be careful when you're lifting this up. This is solid cast iron, so it is kind of heavy. Just be careful when you're taking these things out. I know I'm doing a lot of talking, and I promise I'll shut up soon, but take a look at the style of this manifold right here. So it has one collector. This is a 4-to-1, and you can see that this is a 4-to-2-to-1. And this is also a long tube header, so you can see that it's finally collected down there where it straightens up, whereas this collects up here we go through our catalytic converter, and it makes another bend. So this system right here is going to be a lot more efficient at getting rid of the exhaust gases compared to the stock setup. So let's go ahead and mount this thing in the car. I can't wait to hear how this thing's gonna sound. Okay, so I'm gonna bring you guys up to date and let you know what's been going down with this piece of junk. So I actually started working on this yesterday. I started taking the headers out, or the stock exhaust, the manifold, the downpipe that has the cats in it, and I started to attempt to put in the headers yesterday. Because they're eBay headers, of course, the fitment is crap. Now, I was expecting this to be basically a knockoff of what the good headers are for this thing. Now, they're not. They're kind of the same, but there's a couple differences, and it was a pain in the to get to actually fit and work. So I had to bring yesterday this exhaust, the one that's in the car now that I finally got to work. I brought this down to a friend's house, and he had to chop off one of the extra O2 sensor bungs that were on one of the on the left side of the headers. It's not supposed to be there. I don't know why there's an extra one, but there's an extra one there, and it comes in contact with the steering column. It comes down and it interferes with it. You can't turn the wheel. You can't even bolt the headers on because it's that much of an inconvenience. Not only that, once we got that cut off, welded over, got that cleaned up, after that, they still wouldn't fit. So I'm like, what the hell's the problem now? The piping for it, for the headers, comes down with two pipes off of the 4 part. So it goes from 4 to 2. That 2 section where it comes together is a little bit bulky. It's a lot bulkier than the single that the stock exhaust was. So what does that mean? That means that I couldn't exactly get them to fit because it was in the way, and of course it hit the steering column again. I thought that when I chopped off that little O2 sensor bung, that would be done, but clearly not. Thanks to eBay, I had to do some more work. I just went down to an exhaust shop. They used a pipe bender to bend the pipe back into place, or in a place that wouldn't intrude with the steering. So I have that done. It's finally test fitted in. It's in there. And now it's just a matter of putting everything back together. So putting the O2 sensors in, putting the 8 bolts for the exhaust manifold up to the actual head, and going on from there and connecting the cat back up to that. So I'm gonna fast forward and I'm gonna get this going. I don't really think it's that big of a deal. You guys have seen me put some exhaust work stuff back together. Yeah, I'm not gonna go through the whole procedure, but the next time I turn on this camera, you guys are gonna see this car nice and loud. Sounds good. Let's take this thing for a spin. It's a hot one today, guys. What a beautiful day to go make some noise. So from the sounds of it, when you're just like regular driving, you can't tell that it actually got louder. If anything, I think it might have gotten quieter inside the cabin. Because I can talk kind of normalish and it's not loud. This is kind of like what it was like with the catback exhaust only. Now the reason why that might be is that the exhaust system that I had, like the stock exhaust manifold, it was kind of straight pipe because I was missing one cat. But let's see if we get any more power with this kind of setup. Oh, it definitely sounds better. Ah! Oh yeah. Oh, it sounds good. headers that I got, I did tell you guys they're from eBay. Would I do this again? I probably wouldn't go with the eBay route. The nice headers, like the nice ISR headers, they're 3 times as much as what I paid, give or take. But I've heard many good things about them regarding the installation. So I've heard that the installation isn't as bad as this. Let me just try to fix the picture a little bit. Yeah, so I did have to get it welded. I did need to take it out and put it back in a couple times, but I do think it was worth it after all. Now, I did have to get an M24 by 1.5 plug to block off the EGR. Now, the reason why I did that is because the EGR pipe that's found on the exhaust manifold, the stock one, the one that I had, was way too rusty and I couldn't get it out. The second one, the new one that I got that I went to put in, when I went to go align it, I noticed that the exhaust port, the exhaust EGR port, was in a different spot and it was further away than the previous spot where it was on the stock headers, or the stock exhaust manifold. So all that it meant is I blocked it off and I do not have an EGR system going right now. I'm not sure if the ISR, the ISIS one is any different, but it still works. I do have a check engine light, it's not a big deal, but I still would have a check engine light because I don't have cats. But yeah, man, it sounds friggin' awesome. There's a resonator and a muffler. That's pretty much it. There's no cats, there's no nothing else. And the piping on this system is all 3-inch. The standard piping, I don't even know if it was 2. So this is definitely a huge upgrade versus the stock setup that I did have. Okay, now I'm just gonna drive it a little bit down the street, kind of drive it tame, and I'll shut up so you guys can hear it. That was to 4,000. 5,000. Oh, it's good. Now I think this is going to be a little bit easier to make donuts or get the rear wheels to brake traction, only because I am making a little bit more power and it's making, well, less restriction because I've got bigger piping. It's got a nice backfire after I let off the throttle, which is nice too. So when I just downshifted right there, I could feel that the engine would rev up faster because I had less restriction. But this setup is awesome. I gotta get a video of this at nighttime because I swear it's friggin' firing. There's fire up the exhaust. Just had a little cargasm right there. Okay, so I'm gonna start off in first gear. I'm gonna redline first, and depending on how long the road is, I wanna see if I can redline second. Okay, so. For sure, once I get my coilovers for this thing, it is going to step out a lot easier. Now I do have a little surprise for you guys for the next video. It is regarding the 240. No, it's not me working on the Mini yet. There is some progress on that, and I'll get into that in like a couple videos from now. But you know how I told you guys that I'd be saving up for a little bit? Well, I have a little money set aside for what I want to buy. I bought it. But I have something really sweet coming in. I will be getting my hands on this thing in probably, I don't know, tomorrow or the day after. And yeah, it's a good one. I'll tell you that. Because I'm gonna be getting this mod, it's gonna be lining me up for other mods. So if you guys can guess what it's going to be, I'll give you guys props. I know in a past video, someone mentioned what I was getting and actually nailed it. I'm pretty sure the exact same company too. Yeah, I forget your name, but there's one guy out there that I gotta give you a gold star for. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this video, guys. I think this thing is well worth it. The money, the whatever it is, the aggravation, it wasn't exactly as smooth as I would have planned it to be, but it did work out, and the exhaust is in. I've got full exhaust done from engine back, and I couldn't be happier. If you guys have any questions regarding the video, throw them down in the comment section below, and I'd be more than happy to help. Again, guys, thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the